Alright, so 35mm. This is a game which, in the developer's own words, is a walking simulator with looting elements. A post-apocalyptic tale, about 3 hours long, so quite short. Documenting the travels of two men walking from somewhere in the rural area of Russia into a city, for reasons which gradually become obvious as time goes by. If we're trying to keep this short and sweet so people can see why I'm doing the review, it's currently 50% off. It's about $2.99, which is, in my opinion, if you're into this kind of thing, a really good price for this sort of game. So without wanting to go into spoiler territory too early, I would say that this is a rather good looking game with nice atmospheric elements to it, a rather good score, which is really only hampered by the fact that it tries to have its cake and eat it in terms of gameplay mechanics. There are shooting sections, there are evasion sections, there are looting sections, but they are not fantastically well executed. But as long as you're happy to just go along with that in order to actually have the story told for you, and by all means, take as much time as you like going from one section to another, because you will clearly miss so much stuff, as I did during the Let's Play, this might be the game for you. It's got more to it than Dear Esther, it's got a better story than Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. I'd say the only walking sim this probably doesn't quite measure up to is... oh, bollocks. I would say kind of Gone Home, because that's a lot more story-rich. But at the same time, I have other things with Gone Home. But anyway, but yes, if you're into walking simulators, you're into post-apocalyptic stories, you're into fairly low-key, slow-burn stories in particular, this might be worth giving a go. And as I said, it's on half price until the 26th, if I recall correctly, so if you fancy it, pick it up. Right. I think the people who were trying to get the quick review have gone. Yep, there you go. Excellent. So, 35mm. This is a game that gave me some very mixed feelings in regards to my expectations when I came into it and what I actually got. Not always in a bad way, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, because in some cases the game genuinely surprised me in kind of a nice way. But at the same time, I did come out of it, while appreciating the story in that kind of nodding your head and stroking your chin sort of way, I did feel like this is an early access game for something a bit bigger and a bit more interesting. I'm going to have to go into a discussion about this later, but in general, the idea of the game is that you are some dude, I'm terrible remembering these guys' names, they literally mention each other's names maybe once or twice. One of them's called Petrovic, I think. I know the guy who made it, Sergei Noskov, he's, I think, the guy who voices the other... no, something along those lines. Anyway, two angry Russian men are walking through the countryside when a bear attacks them, yes. So... it's one of these sort of stories where you are pretty much just thrown into it in medias res. You are going from one place to another. Nothing is really pre-established other than that there's been some kind of biological outbreak which has wiped out a huge amount of people, and those who survive are immune and are trying to basically just live their lives as best they can. Some people are living out in the countryside where people within the city think it's safe, whereas in a matter of fact there's bandits all over the motherfucking place, whereas in the middle of the city, at least no one seems to be really going apeshit, although I do recall a lot of assault rifle fire coming from out of the level, so maybe it's not quite as safe as I thought. But in general, it's giving this really nice slow burn breakdown of society, which you might have seen in stuff like Children of Men or The Road, where you're not seeing the world go out with a bang, but with a whimper, and it's that slow death rattle that's really interesting to see, because it's kind of... in terms of the post-apocalyptic genre, you have got those kind of two polar opposites. You've got fucking Mad Max, and you've got stuff like The Road, or Book of Eli, both of which are sort of very, I would say, quite enjoyable, somewhat actiony, especially in the case of the Book of Eli, but one is the world has fallen to pieces and has lost its fucking marbles, and the other is the world has fallen apart and we're just trying to find things that can keep us going when everything else has gone. And I really like that, and the fact that 35mm explores the latter is quite refreshing, because motherfucker, I love me some Fallout, but I could do with some better written Fallout, looking at you, Bethesda. 35mm kind of scratches that itch, because in terms of its narrative, and I know I'm kind of banging on about this first, and trust me, it's because I like it, the game goes for something very, very carefully put together in terms of it never throws plot points at you necessarily. It never beats you over the head with some big moral message. It's really just there to walk through the remnants of other people's lives. I mean, the notes are a little bit heavy-handed, but when you're walking through, say, an abandoned, thrown together, like, a disaster relief zone, and you're finding bodies just cast all over the place, and there's dead children, and there's like projectors that have been half set up, and there's computers, and there's it's like you're walking through a world where everything just stopped and the people left. There is a brilliant episode of a BBC documentary series, theoretical documentary series called If, and one of them is If We All Left, and that is when if humanity just fucking vanished instantly across the entire world, what would happen to the planet within the next 5, 10, 50, 500 years? And this really gave that sense of you are walking through the shell of a society rather than just a blasted hellscape or some dungeon to find loot in. So, credit to the game. I really enjoy the atmosphere and the story, which resolves, might as well get to spoiler territory, seeing as I'm here, resolves with the revelation that the two main characters had some kind of intersection previously. And this is where things kind of get cool, and I really liked the way that this ended. And I know there's an alternate ending, which I will have to check up on. But the main character who you play as is going back to the apartment of his wife. Main reason being that he moved away for work and then never got a chance to come back before the whole outbreak hits. This is why he's travelling back across frigging half of Russia, apparently, to get there. And he's got this friend with him who is very stoic, very gruff, very aggressive, but we don't necessarily know why they got together. At the end of the game, we discover the other guy had been involved in a car crash. The car crash that had killed the first character's wife and daughter. Now, that is actually really good motivation, and as a twist ending, that is really nicely played out. I really love that sense of, oh, well, that's why. But the really, really good thing about it, I know I'm getting kind of gushy over here, but the really, really good thing about that is we don't even know how much either of the characters knew. Which is really interesting, because I honestly don't know, because near the end, the secondary, well, the main NPC, the other guy who's with you, finds the picture which actually gives us, the audience, the reveal that he killed this guy's family during a car crash. But we don't know if he knew it up until then. So was this just some random coincidence, some strange and odd twist of fate? Or was this a genuine attempt to actually atone for what he did and help this guy out? And I love that it left it on a cliffhanger. I just, yes, I am so happy that the game had the balls not to tie everything up with a nice little bow. And again, like, I'll have to see the other ending, but I don't kind of care. I don't necessarily think that's particularly useful to be right now, because the way that this ended was really good. But yeah, in terms of the story, in terms of as a walking simulator, where so many just bash you over the fucking head with the plot, you're like, if you don't engage with it, you're just going to have to stick it out until you get to the end. Whereas with 35mm, there's this sense of, it's happening and it's evolving and you're finding little bits and details there. It's actively encouraging you to want more information, which is a really smart idea, and I appreciated it hugely. So yeah, in terms of the story, loved it. And in terms of the atmosphere as well, in terms of the actual level design, in terms of the art design they used, apart from the very awkward photoshopping in that photo album right at the end, it was really good. I love the fact that they did dip in and out of slightly ethereal horror kind of elements without going full ham in them, especially the metro section, when you are obviously you get separated from your mate just before the main metro section, and you establish this nice little signal where if you see each other, or if you think you found each other, you swirl your light in a circle. And there's this wonderful moment when you get down to this locked door, you look back and there's a torch. And you get a little QuickTime event, which I will talk about in a second, fucking QuickTime events. But you swirl your torch around in a circle. And you wait. And you wait. And then a second torch turns on, and they both start coming towards you. And fuck me if that is not effective scares. That in general, like, you're in pitch darkness, you've got two guys after you, you've got no effective means of defending yourself, and for all you know, that may not even be a human that's coming after you. Like, there is some genuine eldritch shit that does pop up now and again, like TVs randomly turning on and off, or walking down a tunnel and getting this weird, sudden tension headache for no particular reason. Or even, and I mean, to be fair, this is more of a hallucination, but still, the glorious Stalin subway fucking section where the statues come to life as old orchestral music comes on and you have to lay into them with an AK. It is fucking magnificent. There are some set pieces in this game, and just the way the whole direction of it and the way the levels are composed comes together in this fantastically enjoyable way. And I've got a big fucking grin on my face just talking about this. This is how much I really enjoyed some parts of this game. Which is why certain elements really kind of fuck me off. And this is where we get to the kind of the shit part of the shit and chocolate sandwich. This is a walking simulator with looting aspects, with looting mechanics. And while that is fine as a way of giving the player more to do in a more narrative-driven section, there are ways in which you can implement those sort of things in a consistent and accessible sort of way, without compromising the story. This is where I think the game sort of falls down, is that you have a very narrative sort of drive to go from one place to another, but at the same time you are actively consuming food through your journal, which again is not a particularly intuitive interface. So you're encouraged to go around scavenging from the surrounding area and actually finding more food, supplies, ammunition, and various other things like notes and things to boost your morale and all sorts of other stuff. The problem is, the game is so very heavily narratively driven, sometimes you will walk through a checkpoint and lose access to an area without realising you're about to do it. And when you are maybe trying to play a game and get the most out of it, the fact that you are suddenly just booted unceremoniously from one zone kind of ruins it, because I didn't necessarily want to leave some areas. I wanted to explore more, but the game went, no, you've walked over to this particular area, boom, you're done, next plot point, which really drags it out of you. But the thing is, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem if we weren't being encouraged to gather things. If this game had gone full ham with the walking simulator, I could kind of forgive it. If it kind of railroaded me into scavenging sections and then back out of those scavenging sections, that might have actually flowed a little bit better. Whereas just walking into one big sandbox, being told there's shit around here, I think, and then kind of leaving us to it, it's not the best structure for the actual game. The other part of this is that the game does seem to like to use mechanics very sparingly or irregularly. For example, the knife and the axe. The only thing that really differentiates these two items is the knife is good for cutting rope, the axe is good for breaking down doors. I think there are 3 doors that can be cut with rope and 2 doors that can be broken with an axe. And that's over the course of a 3-hour game. And 2 of those doors are right next to each other. And I think 2 of those cut doors are right next to very close proximity to each other as well, which is very weird. It feels like these items were created to solve a very particular problem without necessarily then thinking of, okay, how can we then apply these to future content? It's that kind of point-and-click adventure game logic of, you have this, this, and this. These can all be used for this one particular situation, then chuck them. Except this game doesn't chuck them, so you're left holding these additional items going, maybe something else I can use these for. It never really happens. I mean, apart from the wolf attack, which is in of itself kind of a very stilted, weird section. But anyway, I feel that if this game had maybe committed a little bit more to the exploration and scavenging and puzzle solving as well, I would have really enjoyed it even more, because I could have really got my teeth into picking through areas, unlocking... really bizarre thing. They give you lock-picking mechanics in like the last 10th of the game. Like, literally the last main door you need to unlock without any keys is the first time it introduces lockpicking mechanics. And like, I think the last city section is also where you get the tumbler mechanics for saves. It's like, why are you giving these to me now? Why wasn't they using these earlier? If we want to introduce new mechanics, we don't introduce them in the final act out of nowhere. It really kind of frustrates me, because this could have been a game where I could have sunk more and more time into it and really enjoyed the kind of atmosphere and the whole idea of scavenging through this kind of empty landscape. but the game just couldn't really commit to it. It kind of wanted to have one thing, and it wanted to have another, but it decided... I mean, it still managed to at least accomplish the story part and the tone part of the game. It just couldn't really work out where to put these actual mechanics. And it was kind of like, okay, we need that for this section, we need that for that section, combat section there, and evasion section there. And it's like, if you'd tried more to kind of weave this in, if it honestly feels like someone wrote this game and designed around the story, rather than someone designed a game and wrote around and wove the story around it. And neither of those is necessarily the right way, but it's normally nice to have two people with either one of those standpoints on board a project. So someone can go, okay, and then I go here, and then I go there, and then I go there, and the guy with the gameplay mind goes, okay, but what are they doing as they go from here to there to there? And it's like, there's a rafting section, and there's all these little bits, there's all these little things which happen throughout this game, which are all really nice and neat, and they never really come up again, which just feels like lost opportunity. But yeah, anyway, the game in of itself is very entertaining from a standpoint of someone who enjoys these kind of stories, and like will willingly give a walking simulator a go if the story sounds like it's going to be good enough. The problem is that this game also tries to just shoehorn these additional mechanics in there, which really don't add to the quality of the game at all. They just hint at something that could have been better, and I don't necessarily know what I would have preferred, to just have a very good walking simulator with none of these mechanics, or to have had a less well written story in order to have better game mechanics. I mean, I'd like ideally to have good both, but yeah. Anyway, it's a bit of a shame, but it's still a decent game. And again, $2.99 at the moment. If you fancy giving it a go, if you fancy having a bit more of an explore, as you've seen. As long as you're careful where you walk, you probably won't trigger the next story point. But anyway, I would recommend this game. It's a very interesting idea for a story. It's a very well executed story. And I really hope the dev who did this gets into something else as well. I know they made something beforehand, which I will have to look into. I can't remember specifically what it is offhand. But this is one of the reasons why I really love games from Eastern Europe and from Russia, because the devs there just tend to try things on a smaller scale, which would not really sell in a big mainstream market, and yet they still have the time and the perseverance and the skill to really make that something special. So, yeah. Support your local Russian dev. Send them some vodka or something, I don't know. Sorry. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to me ramble about this game. As I said before, I would recommend it. It's just whether or not this is your cup of tea. Thank you very much for listening to me, and goodbye.